I wanted to talk about the recent events in Texas and just my own experience living in South Florida and owning horses and dealing with hurricanes. And I will attach a couple photos. Recently, this was last year. It was about October of last year. I'm sure you remember Hurricane Mathew was going to hit us here in Florida, and I was terrified. It was my first hurricane owning horses, and it was the scariest thing I ever had to go through. So I really generally feel my sorrow and hurt for anybody out in Texas who is going through this and they don't know where their horses are, or just the fear that they had before the hurricane was coming and not knowing what to do. So I really like to just make this video because this is something that's currently going on, and I really want to talk about my experiences. So without further ado, I'll talk about it. So when Hurricane Mathew was first out in the Atlantic, I watched it I'm a very big news junkie. I love the weather. I love watching the news. I follow it. So I knew way ahead of time it was coming. I've lived in Florida my whole life, so I kind of know what to watch for, whether the waters are warm, the high pressures, the low pressures in the environment, and if the storm is going to strengthen or not. So seeing Mathew, I thought, oh crap, like this is a storm that can potentially hit Florida. So as the days went on, about 4 days later, we here in Fort Lauderdale, we were going to get a direct hit by Mathew. At the time, I think 100 to 200 miles off the shore of Miami, it reached a Category 5. My heart sank. In the 4 days before it hit, I had made arrangements, and obviously I thought this through because I love my horses, and I really thought it through before I made my personal decision on what to do with them. My personal decision was to turn them loose. Now, at the time, I have an Instagram that I've had for a long time that I put photos of Tough and Peanut, and I talk about them. And a lot of people generally felt bad for me that I had to turn my horses loose. But a lot of people gave me backlash. Like, why would you turn your horse loose? There's a hurricane coming. Why would you do that? Where did you turn them loose? Like, I got a lot of hate for it. And, you know, I take hate in stride. I was like, look, you don't know my situation. What was best for my horses was to turn them loose. Now, I didn't just, here you go, have freedom and turn them loose on the street. I didn't do that. In my town, we have a program for hurricane release. And there is a park that's only about 5 miles from my house where they close down the park and they only allow horses to be turned out there. And it's the whole park. You literally let them loose in the park, and obviously the park is gated. They can't get out. And the whole time the hurricane's there, they actually have a cop car in the front gates of the park to make sure nobody goes in and there's no theft. You obviously have to have your coggins. You have to register months in advance before hurricane season even starts. You register. You have to take pictures with your paperwork of your horses, any markings that they may have, brands, tattoos. You take pictures, you document everything, you keep copies of them. Both Tough and Peanut, and at the time, Tough wasn't branded. Peanut has been branded with my brand for years now. So at the time, Tough wasn't branded, and about 3 months before Hurricane Mathew, the brander came down here, and I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna do it. Like, I don't have time. Like, I had to take off work and take him down to another barn. I was like, I don't have time. I really kicked myself in the butt for that, because a brand, and I learned this going through Hurricane Mathew, a brand, people may disagree with branding your horse, but it doesn't come off. In a disaster, a brand is on there forever. So with that being said, even though Peanut had a brand and I had pictures of it, her brand is actually tattooed on my back. So, and I actually chose that brand. I had my tattoo way before I had horses, but I chose that brand because it was like, tell me she's not my horse. Like, that's my horse. So, so me, Peanut, and Tough, we all have the same tattoo. So even though she still had a brand, I painted with cattle chalk my phone number. I spray painted her hooves. I put Sharpies. I put tags in the hair. Like, you name it, I did it. So, and especially with Tough and him being a buckskin, it really showed up. I have bright pink paint that I put on, and I'll put pictures here of the bright pink paint and my phone number and everything. And what had happened is I went out, we were like, last like 8 hours that you had to prepare. I had gone to, supermarkets, I got all my water, I made sure they were taken care of, I took them out to the park. And let me tell you, driving them to that park was the worst drive of my life. Even though the park that I drove them to and dropped them off, I ride all the time there. It's a beautiful park. I've ridden there so many times, so I felt comfortable that my horses at least knew the park and they knew how to get around the park because I had ridden them so many times there. And I just felt that it was the right choice because the barn that I was at was a wooden barn. And as a matter of fact, they were in outside paddocks that if I would have left them in those paddocks and the winds picked up, the wood would just go flying everywhere, projectiles. Actually, at the time, the barn, it is a wood barn. There was an inside aisle and then 2 outside aisles. And everybody was fighting for the inside aisles, even though most horses, those were just their regular stalls. So everybody was fighting for those outside or those inside stalls. And the people that had no choice but to leave their horses on the outside were boarding up the stalls, like putting plywood. So they were putting plywood. Everybody was painting their horses. Of course, they got my idea. I was out of there. I was like, I'm not leaving my horse here. It's a really, I'm not going to say a crummy barn, but it was not the greatest barn that I felt comfortable leaving any of my horses there during a category 5 hurricane. No way. I actually didn't even feel safe leaving my house, but I didn't want to leave my animals and it was just too late for evacuation. So I took them to the park, signed them in. I had paid for this hurricane pasture. I actually got it 2 weeks before Mathew was set to hit us, or even that we knew he was coming. So I did all the paperwork, signed them in, drove them into the park, and I actually have a video that I will put along with this of me letting them go. And when I tell you I let them go, and they didn't act like anything was wrong. They're like, wow, acres and acres of grass, what could be better? They walked off, they just started eating grass, and I cried. I mean, I cried. I actually had the staff of the park come up to me and they were like, it's okay. Like the news was there. They're like, it's okay. They're going to be okay. And I was like, shut up. Like these horses are my babies. Like, no, they're going to die. Like I'm thinking the worst, but like, you kind of have to prepare yourself. Like I didn't know if I was ever going to see Peanut or Tough again. And it was so hard. My husband was there and, he was like consoling me and saying, it's okay. So we got in my truck and we left, and the whole drive, I couldn't even drive. I said, Austin, you need to drive because I can't even drive. And literally the whole way back to the barn, because I still had my Mini there, which I did something separate for my Mini. The whole way back to the barn, I was in tears. I was crying. I called my mom. My mom was crying. Like I was hysterical. I thought I'm never going to see my horse again. Like I know living in Florida, I've been through hurricanes and I couldn't imagine what they're going through in Texas because I've never been through a flood like that. But I've been through hurricanes, category 3s, and they are nasty, and the devastation is crazy, and you don't have power. And back then, in I believe it was 2006, Hurricane Wilma came through, and I didn't have horses then, and it was only a category 3, and it obliterated like the back of my house, like fencing down, screen enclosures down, street signs, palm trees. Like on my dad's house, the front door was ripped off because he had to open it for whatever reason, I don't remember. So it's just, hurricanes are bad. Yes, tornadoes are worse, but you don't, because you don't have time to prepare. But even all the preparation that you can do before a hurricane, they're still terrible. They're still unpredictable. You don't know what the right choice is. So I went back to the barn, and my plan, actually, my family, we run a Western store and a feed store, surprisingly. So I sell horse things and we sell horse food. And in our store, we have like this big warehouse, and it's a big barn, concrete barn, but it's all filled with hay. So obviously I couldn't put my horses in there and eat all our hay. So what I did was I actually pulled my truck with my trailer attached into the barn. I mean, there's like stacks of hay to the ceiling, and it's huge. It's like, I don't even know, 20-foot ceilings. So I pulled my truck and trailer in there, and my husband put his truck in there, and we actually put my Mini inside the trailer for the storm. And I put a bale of hay in there, tons of shavings, a big thing of water, and I just kept him in there because he's a stud, so he couldn't go out. Like I couldn't turn him loose, and I wouldn't want to turn him any loose anyway. But so it was just better for him to go in the trailer in the barn. So that's what we did for them. So that was my choice, and it really sucked that people were like, why are you turning your horses loose? Are you crazy? What are you thinking? And I'm like, you don't know my situation. Like if it's, for me, I feel it's better if we were to get a bad flood, or if there were projectiles, that my horses, that they can get away from that they can flee from it, that they're not tied up where if there is, and I've seen some videos of Houston where there's horses tied up and the water is to their necks and they can't do anything. They can't go to dry land, like, and nobody's there to help them. So I just felt that it was better for me to let them go in this park where they can fend for themselves and use their natural instincts to survive. So ended up happening is, again, I'm in Fort Lauderdale, and what ended up happening was at the last minute, and we were bunkered down in my house, we're like about to get hit by a Cat 5, like shit's about to get real. So we're bunkered in the house, and you know, we have food, we're making food, you know, we shut the shutters, like we have dogs, and all my dogs are with us, and of course I'm like, all I can think about is my horses, like, God, am I ever gonna see them again? And at the last minute, we're watching the news, and Mathew stalls on Fort Lauderdale Beach, like the bands were just hitting the beach, and turns north. So literally in the last hour that we were supposed to have direct impact in Fort Lauderdale, he turns north and we get spared. So literally within, like, I'd say 6 hours of us knowing that we're not gonna get hit, I'm like, oh my God, like, are they gonna open the park? Like, I gotta go get my horses. Like, oh my God, I got it. Like, I couldn't believe that we got so lucky. And it's so sad that the people in Houston didn't get lucky, and those horses didn't get lucky. Like, it's terrible, because I got lucky and I got to go pick up my horses. So Hurricane Mathew ended up hitting St. Augustine, which is in the north part of Florida, kind of by South Carolina. And they got the worst of it. It didn't directly hit, it kind of like skimmed the whole east coast of the country, and like the coastal, whatever, the coastal states. They ended up getting the worst. North Carolina, South Carolina, and St. Augustine, Florida got it really bad. So us on the inland and us down here, we really got spared, and it was by God's grace that we did not, because they said we were getting a direct impact. And if you know what a direct impact is, by category 3, it's bad. So a couple hours, I think by the next day, we kind of stayed in and hunkered down just to make sure, because hurricanes do crazy things. And like you see with the news update with Hurricane Harvey, is that Hurricane Harvey actually went up, went back down, and now is hitting them again. So you just never know what storms are going to do. You just don't know. So like a day after we knew he was going that way, he wasn't going to turn around or do anything crazy like that, they called me and said, listen, we'll reopen the parks. You can come pick up your horses when you choose to come pick up your horses, whatever. So I was all excited. I was like, I gotta go out there. Like, I gotta see, like, shit. I mean, even though we didn't get hit by the storm, are they alive? Like, it turned out, I think that park's like 150 acres, and it's like trails, and, you know, there's all kinds of things. I think there's like some like playground out there. I mean, it's a big park. So I ended up, you know, taking my mini, putting him back at the barn, and going to get my horses. Like, I had to go get them. And I'll put the video right here of going to pick up my horses after nearly getting like screwed by Hurricane Mathew, and me picking them up. And the cutest thing was, I didn't get it all on camera, but the cutest thing was when I turned the corner, Tough knows the sound of my old truck, and this is my old truck in the video. Tough knew the sound of my truck. So literally, as I round the corner, he's sticking his little head in the air, and he's whinnying, and I can see him like way back in the park, and he's whinnying. So I literally see him whinnying, and I got the end of it on the video. It's the cutest thing, and he's whinnying out for me like, oh my God, I hear your truck. Of course, Peanut didn't care. She's like, bitch, I got tons of acres of grass. I never see grass. Like, screw you. Like, I don't want to be picked up. But yeah, she's a mare. So I rolled down my window, and in the video you hear me say, Tubby boy, and he turns around like, hey, you came back. It was just amazing. Like, wow. Like, and here's what I want to say to talk about horses and hurricane preparation. And I learned this going through Mathew. Even though we got saved like at the last minute, we did get a few bands of really hard rain and like decent amount of wind. But I'll tell you this, all of the chalk, the Sharpie, the cattle paint, the spray paint, the tags, everything on that I had put on my horses that you've seen in the pictures were gone. Like, they had no paint on them, nothing. And I thought for sure, like, man, this is never gonna, as I was putting it on, I said, shit's never gonna come off. Like, I have a buckskin and there's hot pink paint on him. Like, how the hell? I'm telling you, my horses were so clean that I just couldn't believe it. Like, I was like, wow. Like, and we just got a couple bands. So I just wanted to say, my personal opinion is that if you are under a hurricane threat or a hurricane warning and you think that you're going to get hit, if you think that your barn is high enough and it's a concrete barn and you literally sat there as an owner, as a horse owner, and you say this barn is safe, then fine, keep your horse there. But if there's a slight inclination that you can have bad flooding or the roof can get ripped off or anything like that, turn them loose. Turn them loose. And even though we didn't get hit, it was the smartest thing I ever did, and I would do it again, because there was nothing that my horses can get snagged on. There was nothing that they could there was no wood around that could fly and hit them and impale them, which I've seen in bad videos. There was nothing that they could, and if it did flood, they could get away. They weren't stalled up, they weren't confined, they didn't have a rope halter or a bit or whatever. They didn't have anything to constrict them. They could save themselves if they had to save themselves. So turn your horse loose. Turn your horse loose. Find a program like mine in your county. Be up to date in your horse community. Turn them loose if you can. If you have acres, if you're in North Carolina or Texas and you have acres, don't stall them up. Turn them out. Take the rope halters off, turn them out. Put your phone number if that makes you feel better. It made me feel better. But I'm just letting you know, we didn't even get hit. We just got bans, outside bans, and all that was washed off my horses. So that's not guaranteed to stay in. The tags, like, I guess the wind was so strong that tags came out of their hair. It's not guaranteed. So I recommend getting a tattoo or a brand that will never come off, so you can eventually, maybe, hopefully get your horse back if it's really that bad. And just on that note, I actually, after Hurricane Mathew, I got tough branded. I was like, I ain't gonna do that again. Like, I won't have to worry about spray paint coming off and getting all up in the air, because I was so anxietized. I actually, after I dropped Peanut and Tough off in that park and we were gonna get hit, I crashed my own truck into my own horse trailer. I backed up into it because I was so distraught of the thought of losing them in a freaking storm. I wasn't paying attention, and I literally just took my foot off the brake and I backed up right into my horse trailer. Just don't even put yourself through that. Take my advice, turn your horse loose, get all that crap off them. And I recommend a tattoo or a brand if you have to do the kind of program and you don't have property that I had to do. So that's what I recommend in a hurricane situation and a hurricane warning, is turn them out, unless you know without a shadow of a doubt that your barn is safe. That's what I suggest. And I'll put all the pictures that I took from Hurricane Mathew and prepping for it. I've been through it. I've been there. So I just highly recommend turn them out. No rope halters, no fly masks, no boots, nothing. Just turn them out. Let them go. Like, let them go, let go, because it was hard for me. So take my advice if you're ever in that warning. And I pray for all the people. I have a really good friend of mine that's going through this. She's in the floods right now. She doesn't own horses, but she's in the floods, stuck in an apartment building. So I really pray for everybody out there who's being affected by this, all the animals, all the people. I'm with you. My store is actually trying to put together a donation to send horse feed out to Texas. I've had a lot of people come into my store today saying, how can I help? So we are putting together something like that. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Remember, turn your horses loose in a storm and get some type of identification on them. All right, thanks. I don't think I've ever seen a better sight in my life.
Tuffy boy! Cornelia! Hey, Tuffy boy!